this video is going to show how to save the values from a form into a cookie, and then when the page loads, to take those values from the cookie and put them into the form. It's also going to show how to delete the cookie, and basically it's going to go from that simple just non-encrypted cookie all the way to having the data encrypted in the browser as well. So to get started, this application is just a skeleton really with the authentication and authorization plugin. So we're going to start by just getting everything ready to demonstrate this by creating some endpoints. Our first step is to create an action or a method within our controller to call against, and we also need in our templates, in our post directory, because it's the post controller, we want to create a template file with the same name. And so that we don't have to sort of type it into the address bar, I'm going to just put a link in my default template here, or default layout, which will give us a, as when we refresh here, will give us a link. Now when I click on this, because the authorization plugin is in play, it basically throws an exception because it's not being authorized properly. But to get around that, we're just going to skip authorization completely. So we're going to say, using the authorization component, we're going to say skip authorization. And then once that's done, Cake knows to not worry about checking authorization, and we get our page. Now, as we just showed earlier, we need a form on our cookie template page to act against. Now, this is going to be using databaseless forms. So it's going to be using the CakePHP form class to provide the context for this form and the data. So let's have a look at getting that going. So the first thing is we create, I'm going to call it form. I'm going to create a new form and pull that in, and then we're just going to set that form to the view, and when we hit reload or we hit the link, we can see that now our form's being loaded. So now let's go in and flesh out the logic to provide a clear function, to save the values in all the form fields into a cookie. In CakePHP, if you go to the application tab and then go down to cookies here, we're going to see a cookie appear here shortly. Now, how do we start with this? Well, we want to say that if we post, or we hit the submit or save button on that form, if the request is a post, we want to do some logic. What do we want to do? Well, when we're posting data from the web page to CakePHP, so we want to get that data, and then we want to start making some decisions with regard what we want to do with that data. So in this case, we're going to save that data to a cookie. I just want to make sure that's pulled in, and the cookie name is form, and the data is that data. Now, as you can see from, if we just have a look at what we're posting, if we have a look at what gets posted back, if we go in and choose to fill in all these forms and then post back, we can see that this is our information that's getting posted, and so we're just basically going to store all that in a cookie. Now the first thing we noticed about that information was that there is an option to clear the field. So we're going to now set up this ability to, if there is a clear checkbox checked, we want to get rid of the cookie. So we're going to say if, now we're going to get hold of the response, and we're going to modify the response by getting whatever the current response is and then adding an expiry to the cookie. Now if the clear checkbox is not checked, we're going to do, did you notice I just did that wrong? With expired cookie. There we go, that's better. And then with cookie. So there we have, so if we clicked clear, we want to expire if there's a cookie there. If it's not got clear set, we want to set the cookie with all the information that's in there, in that data that's been posted back to us. Okay, and finally, whenever we hit post, we want to redirect back to the same page as we were at before. So I'm just going to press enter. James, home, active. And what you notice there when I've hit submit is it's then sent back to the client. If we have a look at the network tab, and we have a look at, I think it's the post, and we have a look at the request, the response, the response came back for that particular post request. It came back with all the form data in a set cookie header. So the browser then says, okay, I better save that in a cookie, and as we can see, it's saved it in a cookie, and you can see the unencrypted information. So we know that address is this value, and then you've got a URL encoded string here, and then that's the value of that address field. Okay, so we can see it's working. Now, how do we get the information that's been set in the cookie into our form? Let's have a look at doing that. So we've got a form here, and the interesting thing about this form is that it has a set data method. So we can set data to it, and it can be just an array of data, and then it knows what to pre-populate its fields with. So how do we do that? Well, I'm going to, by default, I'm going to have it so that the form starts off as form values. They're empty. That's just an empty array. There's no values going to that form. But what I want to do is I want to check if in the request, and we get the cookie collection, so we get all the cookies, and we say, does that cookie collection have a cookie named form? Now if it does, I want to then grab from that cookie collection, I want to get that particular form, and I might put it on a new line, get the value from that particular cookie. So if the cookie is sent from the client exists, then get the values of it and assign it to form values, and then our form, we want to set data those form values, and if it's empty, it'll set empty form values, and if it's got something, it will populate them. So let's do that. Go enter. Now what's happening here? It's saying set data type of array string given. So what's happening there? Let's have a look. Let's dump and die the form values, because it's saying that there's something wrong with that, and it is. It's coming back as JSON, and we need to make sure it's an array. So what we're going to do is we're going to say grab the form values and then JSON encode them. Sorry, JSON decode is probably the better way. And we want to say form values, and then we want to say we don't want a standard class returned, we want a Boolean, no, associated array, sorry, there. So now I think it should work. Let's have a look, and it does. So can you see how if we just change a value and then we hit, now we have a look at our form here, so we know currently the address was home. Now I hit post again, and then it's changed to Melbourne, stored it in the cookie, and then it's redirected and then picked up and read that value from the client and populated our form again. Now of course when we look at the logic, we can see that if the logic says to clear the form, we expire the cookie, and notice what happens in here as we hit save with the clear option set, and we can see that the cookie expires and the browser deletes it, and we're back to a clear form. So again, Rupert Funderspink is a good friend of mine. Home, Fitzroy Falls, great place, go and visit it. I'm going to say active, and then we can see that is working fine. The round trip's working well, and again, of course, the clear option is working. Now, I'm just going to just put something in here. Whoops. Right, so now we come up to the issue where the information that we're storing in our cookie is unencrypted, and that's a potential issue because the client can open Chrome Developer Tools and see what's stored there, and it could be something that we don't want necessarily obvious. So let's make it more secure. Going into our middleware documentation, we find that we've got an encrypted cookie middleware that we can apply. And if we scroll up, where are we? We've got this list of middleware, and I don't know how crucial it is to have them in order, but I am strongly suspecting that some middleware, because it's like a ring setup, it matters where the request is modified, and if it gets modified and then the next step of the middleware is in the wrong spot, it'll create problems because the request is not modified correctly or is being modified before it should. So just paying attention that there's a potential that if you put this in the wrong spot, you'll have problems. Having said that, I'm not really exactly sure where the encrypted cookie middleware will go, so I'm just going to put it after routing in, because it's in this list, and I'm hoping that the guys doing the documentation have done that with some knowledge there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the encrypted cookie middleware option here. I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to add this into my application SRC. So after the routing middleware, I'm just going to paste this in. Going to need to just make some slight changes here. Actually, we can there, and then we need to pull in our class there. Now here we have two things. We've got some configuration data embedded in the middle of our application. So this is saying you specify the names of the cookies to protect. So what I'd like to do is stop that being a place where we store configuration data. Let's just change this, and we'll call this encrypted cookies, and we'll store that in the same place as our cookie key. Now in the documentation it says it's recommended that the encryption key is exclusively for cookie data. So let's implement our cookie key now. Now we can see that security dot here, that's where this is going to be reading. Let's go into our app_local, and we'll scroll until we can see we've just found our security key here. So now we need to implement two different values here. Now this, the way it's set up, has got an ability, you can pull the setting in using an environment variable, and if the environment variable doesn't exist, then it will use the default. So what we're going to do is we're going to say cookie key is whatever is in that cookie key environment variable. Of course we don't have one. So then we need to, it says it needs to be separate from the security salt, but I'm just going to cheat and put in a token called salt, and I'll show you why in just a moment. Then what we're going to do, we're going to go encrypted, that other setting, encrypted cookies, and create an array and insert just the name of the cookie I want to encrypt. So how do we get ourselves a security key into this cookie key? Well, if you have a look in composer.json and look at your scripts key here, you can see there's a post install command located in this installer class. So we'll just go and find that and show you what it's going to do. And we go src controller installer PHP, and we can see that the first method it calls is, I think it's post, you have to go right to the top, the post install method. But one of the things it does, it sets the security salt, which if we remember correctly, it's this value here. So when we first install Cake, it sets this salt, and if we have a look at the set security salt, it basically creates a new key using Cake methods, and then it grabs that key and finds and replaces that salt token. Now I can leverage off that to change my, or add a cookie key. So let's do that. So we're going to go composer, and we're going to go run. And what was the name of the command we want to run? It's post install command. Let's see if this works. Say yes. Now notice there it said I've updated security.salt. It hasn't, it's just added the one that I put that token into, it's replaced that one. So it won't, as long as it hasn't been run before, it won't replace your security salt because the token's not there to replace. But notice that's now added our cookie key there so that we can encrypt using this key. So now we're pretty much ready. Just going back here to check everything looks fairly correct. Let's go back and see what happens when we try and load our keys. Now this is straight away that it seems to be there's some sort of problem, and when you're making a change from unencrypted to encrypted keys, it's a good idea to firstly delete the cookie, and miraculously it starts working again, and go hi James active and press enter. And now we're coming into, we've got an encrypted cookie, which is lovely, but we now got an issue with it's saying that basically here this JSON decode is now trying to decode an array. So it looks like the encrypted cookie middleware is automatically doing the JSON decode for us when it encrypts and decrypts. So what we want to do is we want to just remove that entire line and just take the values straight from that line of code, and we should save Ronald test home. So we can see that if we have a look, we probably need to see the encryption change at each time, every time we press post or save. And then obviously if we watch over here, when we hit clear, it expires the cookie, and it's working as it should, but with encrypted cookies. So that's been a very brief run through on getting cookie encryption running. I hope it's helpful to someone.